Hello there! When Jesus chose 12 unlikely men, the world changed forever. Are you ready for that adventure? I hope you are, so let's go. We're going to explore Mark chapter 3, 4, and 5 in this video. And what we're looking to do is to get into the geography of the ministry of Jesus and explore it and visualize it the best we can. So I highly encourage looking at those chapters and reading a little bit and pausing the video and reading a little bit more so you can learn as we go. The ministry of Jesus took place for either 2 or 3 years. They can see 3 distinct Passovers. So that's either 1 year, Passover to Passover, and then the next one, 2 years for sure, and then maybe there's a 3rd year in there. That's debated, and it happened sometime between AD 27 and 33. And so we've got it locked down to about that type of accuracy. And we know the geography, and so we're going to look at that right now. Let's go into our geography. I like this perspective, but let's get our eyes calibrated to it. We see the southern coast of Turkey over here, Tarsus over here in the very corner of the Mediterranean, the Levant coast, and then Egypt in the background, as the Sinai Peninsula is over here. And Israel is right in this area. So what we'll do is pretend we're in an airplane, and that'll give us some really good perspective. Like pretend we're going on vacation. This costs less than $8,000. We just go through this and see this amazing geography. Not spending $8,000. And there is Israel. So now that we've flown in here, we can more tangibly understand. Here's the Mediterranean Sea, the Dead Sea that we always hear about, the Jordan River, and then the Sea of Galilee right up in here. And let me turn these off for a second because that shows the Sea of Galilee better. And what those areas are, there's Galilee. They're there because we're going to look at Decapolis just a little bit. We hear the word, but when we visually are able to see, and I think we can understand a lot better. See, this is this Greek part because of the Seleucid Empire after Alexander the Great. So you have the Ptolemies down in Egypt and the Seleucids out here in the Middle Eastern region. So this is a Greek area, so that's why it's called Decapolis, the 10 cities. And then Rome is intruding in here from the Mediterranean Sea. So the Romans are a pretty decent land, army, and sea power. So they can come right here on the coast. And so we see the tetrarchy, the 4 pieces of Israel broken up. Well, one of those pieces is Batanea of Philip. See, so that's one of the Herods also, but that's up here in the northeast. Notice that we are looking more south-ish. And so down in this direction, that is north. But if you just remember that this is the Mediterranean Sea that we're flying in on, that we have some really good perspective there about this area. And Mark chapter 3, 4, and 5, they all happen right down here in this area. We're going to skip over. There's Samaria in the distance, and there's Judea in the distance. But see, most of what we have to worry about is in Decapolis and Galilee there in purple. So we're looking at the tracks of Jesus, and see, we start out right there. We have some red tracks that are right there in the northern part of the Sea of Galilee. That's because that synagogue is there, and archaeology has uncovered that synagogue that Jesus was actually at. There's an old Byzantine structure there, and then we have the actual synagogue that Jesus was at. They have located that. They broke through the floor, and they have uncovered that the lower level that was below the church that's existing there now. So that is exciting stuff. Well, we make our way down here to Mark 3:1 that Jesus made his way to the synagogue. And so I have a push pin down there, right there by the Sea of Galilee. There was a person who had a withered hand, and Jesus healed him. It was the Sabbath day, and so a lot of the religious people got upset right here. You can imagine a lot of people saying, this is not the tradition that we have. We usually have testimony time here, we usually have song time, and we read the Torah time, but we don't have this healing people time. And so you can see how that was very agitating to some people. There was always these conspiracies going on in the background, and this is an event that catalyzed more envy, more people to be bothered by Jesus. But the multitude started to get so big that Jesus started defensively using the ships, because not everybody had a ship. And so Jesus could get into that ship and then go out into the Sea of Galilee, and then not everybody had access to him. Plus, he wouldn't be crushed by the people. So this seems to be a pretty good strategy of what Jesus did there. And Jesus has the ship out there waiting, so it seems like what he was doing, and the imagery that I get is lots of people here on the shore, and then Jesus having to, at time to time, get into that ship, go out, he'd talk to them from the ship, and then come back when maybe the population, the multitude, got a little bit less numerous. So now Jesus is getting so popular, so he had to get some disciples. So I'm going to come down in here. We want to be able to visualize what's going on, and so we'll do that by visualizing this next path and try to look up at the horizon, because we can see the mountains there in the background. Jesus went up to a mountain in this next scene. So it's kind of nice that if you were in a ship on the Sea of Galilee, you could look out this way. You could look out to the north, and you could see, like, there's a mountain close to Galilee, and then another one that's really a lot higher. And the people of Capernaum would have been seeing these views. If we look to our left, and we can look out this way, we can look out towards Nazareth. That's out this way, left side of the screen. But it's real interesting to see what this looked like. And let's do a little, maybe we can find out how far it was across here. I'm going to go from one place to another. Look, that's 5 miles across there. That might be helpful to some people. Let's see, how far is it from here to here? Okay, 3 miles. So we're talking about an 8-mile area there. If we go this other way, maybe 4 miles, something like that. Depends on how far I can get out there. Yeah. Okay, we could even... maybe we could go from the north side of Galilee to the south side. It might be 15 miles across there. We change that to kilometers, and maybe it's like 25 kilometers. But I think that's kind of nice to know these kind of things. See, about 8 miles across the Sea of Galilee. Anyway, we get our perspective on what we're looking at. Just think of your nearest lake that is 8 or 15 miles or something. So that's the Sea of Galilee. Some way, somehow, Jesus makes his way up to a high mountain. And we don't know, it doesn't specify which mountain it is here, but you know, if I was hiking, I would definitely want to hike this one. You can see all this beautiful crevices, the trees here. I'd like to get up to this one because I could see the Mediterranean Sea. When you get up there, you can really see a lot. So let's go up this way. We change our perspective a little bit so that we can look out past Tyre and Sidon. So this might be Mount Meron. This is Mark 3:13. And so Jesus and just some people make it up there. See, this is one way to weed out the followers. Is a lot of people don't want to go up the mountain. So Jesus waits and see which people can make it all the way up the mountain to follow him. And then he calls his disciples. And look at that view, looking out to the Mediterranean out this way. We can look to the south and we can see Nazareth down there. We can see the Dead Sea way, way down there. See, Jerusalem is encapsulated in those hills to the south. And then when we look over, we can see that beautiful Jordan River, and the Sea of Galilee is almost like a resort area, is what it looks like to me. When we look back at the Sea of Galilee. Yeah, and we can see how much of a hike this might be. You're going way up here. Yeah, 12-mile hike, 13-mile hike. Change that to kilometers. Okay, 21 kilometers. As the crow flies. So this is where Jesus calls his disciples. So he goes from 5 disciples to 12 right here. And Judas Iscariot was in there. Judas Iscariot was athletic enough to make his way to the top of a mountain. Well, the next data point that we have is going down into Mark 3:19. Now we have the disciples and Jesus going into a house. And we've seen that a couple times. And we know that Peter's house is down here. We don't know that it was Peter's house, but we could just say somewhere down here there was a random house. And since Jesus is getting more popular now, you have his brethren and his mother come down so they can see all the latest events that are going on. They're like, what's going on? This is Jesus. Really, Jesus? We know him. He's our brother, you know. What's going on here? I don't know how hard he disowned them, but he said his family is actually consists of the people that are doing the will of the Father. Yeah, so that is an interesting kind of a letdown right there. I don't know how harsh of a letdown it was because we don't have little emotion signs in the Bible. But just like how Jesus learned to use the ships as a defense, Jesus entered into a ship in Mark chapter 4. Remember, you can pause the video at any time and read up to the text. You can fill in all the details of what actually went on. When he goes out into a ship, you know, there were other little ships. I mean, that tells me that the ship that Jesus was on was a medium or large size vessels compared to all these little tiny ships that are going around it. So he's teaching the people. Some people have their little ships and they're kind of floating around this bigger size ship. So that's there's some interesting details when we look analytically at the text to find some details. But based upon the miracles and the teaching and everything, Mark 3:22, there's definitely some conspiracies that are going on. And so things are getting a lot more heated for the ministry. So then we go past that Mark 4:36. We're a little bit farther out here on the Sea of Galilee. And we find out that there is a storm at sea. And this would not be noted unless it was pretty spectacular. It was so spectacular that people that had lived on the lake their whole life were scared for their lives. So this was no little schism. Great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship so that it was now full of water, and Jesus is just sleeping in the back of the ship. Yikers! So anyway, they came to the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. That's in Mark chapter 5. Now I have the red lines going along here because we have a few places Jesus might have been. There's Cursey. This is the traditional place where Jesus landed and drove out the demon that was in the tombs. But when I was trying to research the Gadarenes, I found a few places. I found the city of Gadara, which is now called Kais, and then there is also Kemat Gadar. And I have them way out here. You can look, I'm clicking in the background, Hamat Gadar. And that whole land, it seems like a smaller area that would have been Decapolis. Remember, Decapolis was this whole area with the 10 cities. Well, this is just a few of those 10 cities, maybe the land of the Gadarene. But so anyway, Jesus could be here in Cursey or somewhere along these these hills. And remember that there was the demon-possessed man, and then they said we're legion, and Jesus drives the demons into the pigs, the swine. And that is amazing because it says they found some cliffs or some place to run themselves off of, and then run themselves into the sea. So I can see these really steep hogbacks. They're called hogbacks by the geologist because the water runs off, and because of the angle of the steepness, then they have fast erosion in certain places, and then it's similar to a hog's back. But I can see how the swine could have run down these hogbacks and into the Sea of Galilee. And when I'm looking along this opposite side of the Sea of Galilee that's on Decapolis, I can see three places where Cursi is, the traditional place, and then this other where people might have come down, and Jesus might have been on his ship just teaching anybody that he could teach along this coast, and then this southern area, this Hamat Gader and Gadara in the background. I can see that there would be a lot of people, mountain people, that would come down to the lake in any of these three spots. So let's change our perspective around, and we can look at the Sea of Galilee and this area. We'll just come over here. This is the traditional place for that crazy man that was among the tombs. You could see him just slobbering on himself and running down these hills. Blah, and Jesus is down there. And, have mercy on me. Blah. I could just imagine the spectacle right there. Well, we get past Mark 5, country of the Gadarenes, and then we come back unto a ship in Mark 5:18. And the crazy guy wanted to get into the ship with Jesus and the now 12 disciples, but Jesus said, no, you go and minister to the people of Decapolis. So now, if we zoom out a bit, that's extremely strategic. Now we have Galilee being evangelized. I'll zoom out even a little bit more, because that's just not good enough yet. And then you have this possible Gentile, possibly hybrid Jew living in Gentile land, something like that, but just across the Sea of Galilee in Decapolis. So now that demon-possessed guy who is now delivered goes to publish what Jesus did all over on this east area. So now you have multiple kingdoms involved with this ministry. And all Jesus has to do is help people, right where he is, help people. So after Mark chapter 5:18, it says he goes back to the other side. See, if he's down here, land of the Gadarenes, the other side is up here, where that synagogue of Capernaum is. And if he's over here, he could be, go across back to that house, or, Peter's house that's still on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. But whatever the case is, we're up here in the north again. Mark 5:21. Jesus making use of that boat so that in one spot he doesn't get too much of a hot spot and get crushed. Then we have multiple miracles on the other side. That's in Mark 5:22 to 43. Jesus is trying to make it over to the daughter of Jairus. And it says in Mark 5:24, and Jesus went with him, and much people followed him and thronged him. While Jesus is trying to help Jairus' daughter, then we have that woman with the blood disease that touches the hem of his garment. So we have so many beautiful stories that are right here in the north part of Galilee. All those are happening right here. So this is very significant. If you ever take a vacation to Israel, then definitely set your sights on northern Galilee. So there's beautiful stories there. And now look out at the mountains. If you're down here on a boat, you are just right here along the coast. You're walking along these pathways. The people are coming to you from every which way. And this is what you're seeing, the towns of northern Galilee. Places that Jesus would have seen from his birth, from Nazareth. He could have looked down on this Sea of Galilee his whole life. And now he's down here in the thick of the ministry. So just check out those mountains in the background. Check out the shapes of the lakes. Think about how this applies to your own life. Hopefully that's really helpful to you. So this series is going to have a part 3. We're going to start in chapter 6 then. And we're going to pick up our hovercraft right here at Capernaum. So I hope you learn lots. I hope you help lots of people. I hope you have an awesome attitude at work. And I will see you in the next video. God bless.
Thanks for tuning in to the Periodic Table of History. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. For more videos, click on the channel name.